The lantern sputtered on its hook, throwing long shadows across the platform boards. Each gust of desert wind rattled the glass as though eager to snuff it out. Dust rolled in slow waves along the tracks, covering the iron rails in a skin of red grit. The woman sat upright on a trunk, gloved hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the horizon as another train shrieked into the night. Steam poured, brakes groaned, sparks jumped from the wheels. Passengers spilled onto platform. Miners, farmers, women with tired babies clutched against their chests. But no man stepped forward for her. She did not move. Only her eyes shifted, measuring each face, then settling again into the stillness of waiting. The townsfolk had started to notice. On the first night, they whispered in corners. On the second, they pointed as they passed. Now, on the third, the whispers carried a sharpness. "She's waiting on a ghost," muttered a saloon hand, his hat low over his brow. "Or a man who got wise and ain't coming," said another, spitting tobacco into the dirt. But the woman did not blink. She sat in her plain gray dress, hem dusty, veil tucked into her collar. Her back was straight, her eyes unwavering. Only the slightest tremor in her jaw betrayed the weight of hours spent listening to whistles that never brought the one she sought. The station master cleared his throat near her. "Ma'am, last train till morning. You fixin' a head-on, or—" Her gaze silenced him. Something in it, a quietness sharp as a blade, sent him fumbling for his pocket watch and retreating toward the office. The train hissed and screamed away, swallowed by the desert night. Silence returned, thicker now, heavy as the stars pressing down overhead. She drew in a slow breath, hands still folded, as though willing her bones not to betray her. From the dark edge of the platform, a soft laugh rang out, not mocking, but curious. Children's laughter. Boots scuffed across the boards, small ones, clumsy yet bold. Then came the tug. A tiny hand, dusty and warm, pinched the fabric of her dress. She looked down. A child no taller than her hips stood there, hair tangled, face smudged with dirt. The boots were too big, the hat slipping over one ear, but the eyes, wide, unblinking, looked up at her as though she were the answer to a question older than the desert. The child's voice was steady, though faint. "Will you marry my daddy instead?" The platform stilled. Even the wind seemed to hush. The men at the far end stopped their game of dice, heads turning. A woman carrying baskets paused mid-step. The station master froze in his doorway. All eyes swung to the stranger in gray, and to the child tugging her skirt. The widow did not flinch. Her gloved hands unfolded slowly, resting against her knees. She studied the child as though measuring whether the question was jest, plea, or curse. "Who is your daddy?" she asked at last, her voice low, even. The child pointed into the dark, toward the edge of town where lantern light gave way to the long sweep of the desert. No man stood there, no figure waiting in shadow, only the emptiness beyond. "He didn't send me," the child whispered, as if confessing a crime. "I sent for you. Daddy needs you." The crowd broke into murmurs. Laughter here, disbelief there. "She sent herself a bride?" One man chuckled. "No, listen. Kid saying he wrote the letter." The widow's eyes lingered on the horizon, then on the child. No trace of humor softened her face. She rose from the trunk, straightening to her full height. Dust slipped from her skirts. The boards creaked beneath her boots. The child's hand did not let go. "3 nights you've been sitting here," the child said, louder now, as though the courage had been borrowed from her silence. "Daddy don't know how to ask, but I do." The widow studied the grip on her skirt, the knuckles thin as bird bones, stubborn as oak roots. Then her gaze lifted. The crowd's laughter did not reach her. Their whispers were no more than wind in grass. A silence deeper than night spread between her and the child. The storyteller's voice, far away, seems to fold into the scene. Asterisk, that was the hour folks will remember, the moment when a woman bound in sorrow was bound instead by a child's hand. Not by contract, not by promise, but by something older than law. Asterisk, the widow leaned down, close enough that the dust of the child's hair brushed her cheek. "Take me to him," she said. The child's eyes widened, then shone, as if the stars had bent low to live inside them. Fingers tightened on her dress, pulling her down the steps, away from the lantern glow. The crowd parted, some scoffing, some watching with a strange unease, as the two vanished into the dark. The train station stood silent behind them, boards creaking in the cooling wind. The lantern flickered once, guttered, and died, and so began the legend. The door creaked wide, hinges groaning like an old mule, and the child burst through with dust still clinging to their boots. The widow stepped into the threshold after, eyes narrowing against the dimness inside. The room smelled of leather, sweat, and wood smoke. A man rose slowly from the table where he had been mending tack, his broad shoulders filling the lantern glow. His beard was unshaven, his shirt rolled to the elbow, scarred hands blackened from rope and earth. "What is this?" His voice rasped, neither gentle nor cruel, but heavy, like gravel dragged in a tin pan. The child rushed forward, tugging at his arm. "Daddy," she came. "I told you she would." He looked past the child, gaze fastening on the woman who still stood in the doorway. The silence between them thickened. His eyes, gray and hollow as storm clouds, betrayed no surprise, only weariness too old for his years. "You sent for her?" he asked the child. The widow answered instead. "The letter was a child's, not yours." The man's jaw hardened, but no words came. He sat back down slowly, palms pressed flat against the scarred tabletop, as though weighing how much of his life to lay bare. The child climbed onto the bench beside him, chin lifted stubbornly. "I told her you needed her." "We do." His head bowed, shoulders tightening. "You shouldn't have done it." "She's here," the child pressed. "You can't send her back now." The widow's boots tapped across the wooden floor. She set her small case by the wall, dusting her gloves against her skirt. "I will leave at first light if that is your wish." His gaze lifted again, steady now. "You don't belong in this fight." "Fight?" she asked. The word hung, unspoken and undeniable, until the child's voice filled it. "The men came again last night. Said they'd burn the barn. Said they'd take the land." The widow's eyes drifted to the window, where fence posts leaned like weary sentinels against the sweep of moonlit prairie. Shadows shifted beyond the yard, long and restless. The man exhaled slow. "They've been after this place 2 winters now. Baron wants the water. Hired guns want to pay. Ain't but me standing between them and the dirt under my boots." "You can't," the child said sharply. Fists knotted on the table. "Not alone." The widow's hands folded before her, still as stone. "And yet here you are, still standing." He gave a humorless laugh. "Barely. A herd gone. Fences cut. Men watching from the hills. I'm worn thin, ma'am. Too thin to protect what's left." The child's eyes burned. "That's why she came. She can help." He turned to the child, voice breaking low. "You don't understand what you've done. You dragged her into something she can't. I asked her." The child snapped, tears glistening. "And she said yes." The silence that followed was thick as smoke. The widow stood unflinching, her shadow stretching long in the lantern light. The storyteller's voice hummed over the moment, distant as wind across stone. Asterisk. Folks remembered the weight in that room, the way 3 lives stood at a crossing. A man who had nothing left to give, a child who had nothing left but hope, and a woman who had nothing left to lose. Asterisk. The man rubbed a hand over his face, weariness pulling at his skin. "You'll be safer on the morning train." "Safer?" Her voice cut clean, unshaken. "Safer than the child? Safer than the land you'll bleed to keep?" His eyes met hers then, truly met them, and for the first time his hardness faltered. There, in the quiet steel of her gaze, he saw no pity, no naivete, only a silence deep enough to bury sorrow and still breathe. Outside, a horse snorted, iron shoes scraping dirt. The man's head snapped toward the window. Lantern light glinted on glass panes as shadows shifted again at the edge of the yard. "They're here," he muttered. The child's breath caught. The widow's fingers flexed, tightening on the hem of her gloves. The man stood, hand going to the rifle leaning in the corner. His voice was low, grim. "They like to watch. Remind me the night ain't mine anymore." The widow stepped closer, her dress brushing the floorboards. "And tomorrow?" He shouldered the rifle, eyes fixed on the dark. Tomorrow they'll come in daylight, bold as rattlers in summer. The child's voice cracked. Then we'll fight. With her. The widow laid a hand on the table, steady as stone. I will stay. Until it ends. The man's jaw clenched, his chest rising with a breath caught between refusal and surrender. He turned from the window at last, shoulders bent beneath a weight invisible yet crushing. You don't know what you're a skin, he said. Her reply was plain, calm as a church bell. I've known worse. And there in the stillness of that lantern-lit room, something shifted. Not trust, not yet, but the faintest tremor of fate, like the first crack in dry earth before the storm. The child leaned into the widow's side, fingers clutching her skirt with the same certainty they'd shown on the station platform. The storyteller's voice rose again, faint and echoing through time. Asterisk, so it was that she stayed. Not because he asked, nor because she had nowhere else to go, but because a child's faith lit a fire the desert could not snuff, and a weary man found himself staring at a stranger who carried shadows deeper than his own. Asterisk, the lantern sputtered. Shadows lengthened, and the night pressed close against the windows. The fight was not yet upon them, but its footsteps were already at the door. The fence lay split in the dirt, posts hacked through, wire curling like wounded snakes. Cattle prints stamped the ground, scattered and frantic, vanishing into the desert night. The man knelt, running scarred fingers along the tracks, jaw tight. The child stood close, clutching a lantern that guttered in the wind. The widow lingered behind them, veil pulled back, her face unreadable in the flicker. Not coyotes, the man muttered. Men drove 'em off, left the gate wide. The lantern swayed. Beyond its ring of light, darkness stretched endless and watching. The widow's eyes followed it. They were close, too close. The man straightened, shoulders stiff. They want me rattled. They'll take the herd one night, the barn the next, till nothing's left to fight over. The child's voice cracked. Then fight now. He turned sharp, but the fire in the small face stopped him cold. For a long moment, he only breathed hard, fists at his sides. Then he shook his head, stepping back toward the house. Not tonight. Not till I choose the ground. The widow lingered at the broken fence, her hand brushing the cut wood, fingertips tracing the mark of the blade. She looked into the black desert beyond, eyes narrowing, as if she could see the men who watched from its veil. Dawn broke red. Smoke rose from the far ridge, a thin coil that drifted above the canyon line. The widow stood on the porch, skirt whipping in the wind, while the man saddled his horse. They're sending a message, she said. He pulled the cinch tight. Message received. The child appeared with a small tin pail, stubbornly hauling water to the trough. We're not leaving. You said we wouldn't. The man looked at the widow, but she gave no answer. Her gaze followed the smoke. By noon, word had reached town. The Baron's men rode to saloon, loud, drunk, bragging. By dusk, a rider brought word to the ranch. Sundown tomorrow. Leave or burn. The man slammed the paper onto the table. They're done circling. Sundown it ends. The child's breath came quick, sharp. We'll stand. The widow's hand pressed against the paper, flattening it. Her voice was calm. Then prepare. And she moved. Out to the yard, to the barn, to the fences. She gathered tools, rope, nails, oil. She dragged boards across windows, sealed the barn doors, checked the hinges on the gate. The man watched her. You've done this before. Her glance was brief, hard as steel. Once. Nothing more. That night, as coyotes yipped far off, the widow walked the perimeter alone. The wind hissed across the grass, carrying faint echoes, laughter, spurs, whispers she could not place. Shadows shifted on the ridges. Lanterns snuffed the moment she turned her eyes. The child watched her from the porch, blanket around small shoulders, trusting her steps in the dark. When she returned, she sat by the fire without a word. The man finally asked, "What kind of woman prepares like a soldier?" Her eyes did not lift from the flames. The kind who's buried one. Silence spread, heavy, raw. The fire popped, throwing sparks into the dark rafters. The storyteller's voice broke softly across the stillness. Asterisk. And so the whispers grew. She had come not as bride nor burden, but as something else. A shadow with fire still inside her bones. A woman with more than sorrow in her hands. Asterisk. The night passed in uneasy fragments. Hooves circled once, then faded. The barn creaked. The child dreamed fitfully, calling out against unseen terrors. The widow never closed her eyes. By morning, the ranch was ready. Boards nailed, water drawn, rifles laid out across the table. The man checked each cartridge, his movement steady but grim. The child slipped small hands into the widow's, whispering, "You'll stay?" She tightened her grip, slow, certain, till it ends. The sun dragged across the sky, each hour heavy with silence. Birds vanished from the fields. The wind died. Even the earth seemed to wait. At last, shadows stretched long. Sundown neared. The widow stood in the yard, hair tied back, skirts pinned from movement. Her eyes were clear, steady on the horizon where dust began to rise. The man stepped beside her, rifle slung, jaw set. The child clung to the doorway, small figure caught between fear and defiance. The first riders crested the ridge, silhouettes black against the bleeding sky. Then more, spreading wide, their laughter carrying faint and sharp on the wind. The widow breathed slow. The child's words in the station echoed, soft and unshakable. Asterisk, Daddy needs you. Asterisk. And the storyteller's voice, like a drum across the years, rose. Asterisk. So came the hour. Not the wedding she had traveled for, but the battle she was fated to join. And those who watched swore they saw the shadows bend around her, as though the desert itself knew she was no stranger to the storm. Asterisk. The riders came on. Sundown bled across the ranch. Hooves thundered down the ridge, dust boiling in the dying sun. The widow gripped the rail fence, her skirts snapping in the wind. The rancher leveled his rifle, jaw clenched, while the child's breath came in ragged bursts from the doorway. The first shots cracked sharp across the yard. Splinters burst from the posts. The widow didn't flinch. She moved fast, pulling the child back behind the wall, then seized a rifle leaning near the door. The weight of it was steady in her hands, like an old memory waking. The riders fanned wide, circling, hollering, gun barrels flashing in the red light. The rancher fired, one man toppling from his saddle. The others roared louder, spurring forward. The widow stepped into the open. Her dress was plain, but her stance was not. She braced, lifted the rifle, and fired clean. One rider fell. Another swerved. The rancher turned, startled with precision, but she was already chambering the next round. The child's voice carried behind them, high and fierce. "Don't let him take it." Bullets screamed past. The barn door shuddered under impact. Boards splintering. Horses shrieked. Men cursed. The air filled with grit and smoke. The widow kept firing, steady, measured, every shot placed with cold intent. Her eyes were narrow, unblinking, the stillness of years of sorrow now burning like iron in a forge. The rancher reloaded, covering her flank. "You shoot like a soldier," he growled between volleys. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm and low. "I was a soldier's wife." The words hung only a breath, then were drowned in gunfire. The Baron's men pressed closer, some leaping from horses, rushing the yard. The widow dropped the rifle, drew a revolver from beneath her coat, steel flashed in her grip, quick and sure. She moved with a rhythm, not a panic, but a certainty, each motion honed by memory etched deep. The rancher fought beside her, rifle cracking, fists swinging when a man got close. But it was the widow the men began to fear, her silhouette in the dust, her shots ringing clean, her steps unyielding. The child crouched in the doorway, clutching a carving knife, eyes wide but shining, watching, believing. The barn caught fire. Flames licked high, smoke rolling black against the bruised sky. Shadows danced across the yard, twisting around them all. Through the smoke rode a figure broad as a wall, hat low, coat black, the Baron himself. His horse stamped and screamed, nostrils flaring. His voice cut sharp across the din. "Enough of this. You'll die or you'll yield." The rancher spat into the dirt, rifle steady. Not my land, not my child. The Baron sneered. Then you'll lose both. He raised his pistol. The shot never came. The widow stepped between them, revolver raised, eyes locked on the Baron. Her veil had torn away, her hair loose, her face carved in the firelight like stone. You'll take neither, she said. The Baron's laugh was short, cold. And who in hell are you? The widow's answer was a shot, clean through his hat, grazing his temple. The horse reared, the Baron swore, firing wild. She didn't flinch. She advanced. The men around him faltered. Whispers rippled. Her name, half forgotten, half feared. Some swore she had stood once against raiders and lived. Others that she had buried men twice her size with nothing but iron in her hand. Whatever the truth, the sight of her in that burning yard was enough to unman them. The Baron steadied, eyes narrowing. So the ghost true. Her revolver stayed fixed. And you'll join it. The standoff stretched, fire roaring behind, dust swirling between. Then both moved at once. 2 shots cracked. The widow staggered, shoulder burning. The Baron reeled, chest punched through, breath shattering in a gurgle. His horse screamed, bolting into the smoke, dragging him lifeless from the saddle. Silence fell heavy. The men froze, eyes wide, then broke. Horses wheeled, boots pounded, guns clattered into dirt. One by one, they fled into the night, leaving the yard aflame, smoke, and the 3 who remained. The widow lowered her gun, hand trembling only once before she steadied it. Blood ran down her arm, dripping into the dust. She turned toward the child. The small boots pounded across the ground. The child threw arms around her waist, burying their face in her scorched dress. I knew you'd do it. The rancher staggered to her side, breath ragged, rifle slack at his hip, his eyes, wide with awe, fixed on her. You saved us. She shook her head, voice faint but firm. No, the child did. I only answered. The flames consumed the barn, heat pushing them back. The rancher caught her arm, steadying her. Stay, he said rough, urgent. Not as a bride bought or begged. Stay as what you are. Stronger than me. Stronger than all of M. The child's eyes lifted, shining through smoke. Please. The widow's gaze swept the ranch. The broken fence, the burning barn, the open land stretching endless beneath the bruised sky. Her hand rested on the child's hair, then on the rancher's callous grip, and for the first time in 3 nights, her lips softened into something like a smile. The storyteller's voice rose, carrying the weight of years. Asterisk, some say she built her life there, and the ranch stood stronger with her name carved into its timbers. Others swear she rode on, a shadow carried by the wind, never tied to any man or land. But all agreed on this. When the sun bled over the station and the child's small voice called her to fate, a legend was born, and the desert, though wide and cruel, never forgot her step upon its dust. Asterisk, the flames hissed, the night deepened, and the tale lived.